in the ITC and in the ILO that has supported the establishment and development of this process. Well, actually, I would like to start by presenting myself. I am Stefano Merante. I am the TVET and Skills Development Program Officer at the International Training Center of the ILO. Today, actually, you will get to know a bit more about the whole team that is working on this topic. All my colleagues are going to introduce themselves when they're going to speak, and everybody will have a role today. So thanks to all of the colleagues who are here. I would also in particular like to thank all the Cambodian partners that have made this process possible. I think it's a very interesting piece of work that we are going to do together. I see already some representatives from the different institutions, from the Ministry of Labor, from the CAMFIBA, and from all the partners of this process being here. So it's an absolute pleasure to be with all of you today for this process that will, let's say, keep us busy for the upcoming weeks. I would like maybe just to briefly pass the floor to my colleague Karine Sonigo from the ILO, and she will maybe put the work that we are going to do into the context of the ILO's work on the digitization of skill systems. And then I will do a brief presentation on the process itself, on its steps, and the dimensions that we are going to consider in this first week, whose objective is to take a joint shared picture of the digital transformation process that is happening in your country as far as the skills TVET systems is concerned. Karine, floor to you.
Thank you very much, Stefano. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to be joining this webinar today. I hope you are all doing fine. So as Stefano said, I'm Karine Sonigo, and I'm a skills digitalization specialist at the ILO Skills Branch. And I'm going to, as an intro today, take you through some of the main components of the ILO vision to drive digital transition through skills development. So very briefly, just going through the fact that we are working hard on anticipating skills need for digital transition, which is a huge part of going digital, and that in different economic sectors, trying to establish a methodological approach of identifying skills needs through big data sources, for example, and matching those needs with local markets demand, therefore addressing potential gaps. We're also very much working on establishing and going through an inclusive approach to digital skills development, and among others, supporting inclusive digital and analog technologies for distance learning and support, supporting trainers and teachers in this new learning and teaching environment, supporting students and learners' readiness to develop those skills in this new hybrid learning ecosystem, and also, of course, providing support, career guidance, and digital skills development for learners to make sure and ensure kind of a successful learning to earning transition in that respect. Then, and of course, this is why we are all here today, we are working on supporting the modernization of TVET and national skill systems, supporting both TVET institutions and governments within the digital transition, working with governments, policymakers, but also TVET management, staff, trainers, and teachers to efficiently undertake and the digital transition and operate in this new environment. So whether that be at the organizational level or at the process level or at the content and curriculum level, which is the reason why we are all here today, we are making sure that we are supporting TVET and national skill system within this transformation and digital transition. So I hope you'll make the most of this webinar today and of the course as a whole. And I thank you very much for this introductory part. Stefano, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would also like to say that I recognize several people that have also participated in our past e-learning course. So it's also a pleasure to find once again, colleagues with which we have already undergone several activities, and it's really a pleasure to be together. Now, I would like to really present 2 slides. So really something very simple, to maybe give you the overall picture of what we are going to do in the upcoming weeks. Let me just share my screen. Voila. There we go. So actually, what are we going to do, or what is going to happen if this would be a movie? So these are the 5 phases of the process that we are going to do all together. So it's not really a course, but it's really a process that we are going to do all together. And the overarching objective of this process is to develop digital training materials and assessment packages. So that's the end goal of what we are going to do throughout these 5 phases. The end goal, the objective, is to really concretely support the blending of your TVET curricula and of the RPL assessment packages. But how are we going to get there? First of all, and this was and is the objective of this first phase, is to have a picture, a common picture of the digitalization level of the Cambodian TVET system. Why we are starting from that? Because producing digital training materials and assessment packages is not just a mechanical or, let's say, technical work to take something that already exists and transform that into a digital product. We have to look at that within the broader process or digital transformation that the country is undergoing. Transforming and digitalizing training materials or developing new digital training materials is just one of the building blocks of a digital transformation of your TVET system. So we want this week, we did an individual survey, we did a system level survey, and now through this webinar to come up with a joint reflection on what is the current situation of the digital transformation of the TVET system in your country. Then, when we have understood the reason why we are there and in which context we are working, we would transfer to the phase 2, which will happen next week. In order to develop digital training material and assessment packages, the first thing that we have to do is to better understand which occupation we are going to work with. So here we have to clearly understand what is the occupation we are picking up and why. So we will have a series of questions that are going to support this choice. Of course, there are also very tangible elements into this discussion that we need to take into account. Do we have already existing training materials, already existing competency standard, et cetera, for a specific occupation? Because in a digital transformation process, you never start completely from scratch. So the idea is to be able to assess what we have according to the different occupation, to respond to labor market needs, because of course, digital transformation should not take away the importance of developing market-driven and market-relevant contents. So actually the choice of the occupation should also be, let's say, in line with the needs of the labor market, with the needs of the employers, with the needs of the upskilling and reskilling of workers that are already in the labor market. In the third part of our work, we are going to map the competency standards. So we have decided on which occupation we are going to work, on which competencies we are going to work. We are then going to map the competency standard in order to better and deepen our understanding of the competency that we are going to work on. We are going to split this competency in learning situations, and then in the phase, with the phase 3 and phase 4, we are going to decide which learning situations we are going to digitalize. By digitalizing already existing training materials or by creating new digital training materials. So the idea there is then to have at the end of the phase 4 a clear list of the learning situations related to the competencies that are related to the occupation that we have chosen, in order for then in the phase 5, which is the final phase of this process, to actually develop those digital training materials and those assessment packages. So we are going to do this whole process as a group, but we are also going to be divided in subgroups in order to work in a more effective manner. So some group are going to work on the occupations related to the tourism sector. Some groups are going to work on the occupations that are related to the construction sector. So these are the 2 pilot sectors that have been chosen for this process. But within those sectors, we have to define for which occupation and on which competencies we are going to work. So this is a very key point, because we are going to be, at some point, of course, we are going to be split into subgroups, and we are both working on digital training materials for the TVET learning curricula, but as well for RPL assessment packages. I hope this is clear, and I am also ready to take questions if there are questions on this presentation of the process. Now, the second slide that I would like to really give you, we see all these waves coming up. It is about the, let's say, how we have considered digital transformation. So what we have looked at, in particular through the system level survey that you have filled in, are 3 main elements. Digital transformations building block are in our, this is one of the visions, of course, there are many, but we actually, on this digital transformation of digital learning materials and RPL assessment packages, we need to consider 3 main dimensions. And these are also the dimensions that will be presented afterwards by Alessia, who has summed up the results of your survey. But as well, these are the 3 dimensions on which we are going to work today throughout this webinar. The 3 dimensions are the following: infrastructures, attitudes, and skills. These are the 3 ingredients for this digital transformation process of training materials and RPL assessment packages. So in terms of infrastructures, what we need, of course, is digital equipment, which are, of course, a prerequisite in order to carry on digital learning, as well as, of course, internet connectivity and accessibility. This third word, of course, this third concept is very important, because we need equipment, but we also need connectivity, internet connectivity, but we also need that actually people have access to those equipment and to those connectivity. So this is what we would like to say as far as the first dimension is concerned. But you may very well have infrastructures, but this will not be enough for a digital transformation process. So what we will need is also the attitude. This is something that, of course, international evidence and a lot of our work as well here at the ITC-ILO has shown very clearly. It's not only a matter of having a tablet, of having a PC, of having a good connection and having access to all of these, but it's also related on how we are approaching the topic of digital transformation. So this problem-solving mindset, clear goals, but also a potential attitude, positive attitude towards this digitalization process is really key. And we see that at all levels, policymakers levels, as well as the manager and the management level, as well as at the trainers and trainees level. So attitudes of all the stakeholders in this chain are fundamental if we want to effectively achieve a digital transformation of TVET package and RPL assessment packages. The third, of course, is related to our skills. So we can have infrastructures, we can have a positive attitude, but we also need the technical know-how on how to implement some of these processes. This is not only related to the, let's say, the digital transformation per se, but there are also technical and pedagogical skills that are needed. For instance, when we are going to analyze competencies, it's, of course, there is a prerequisite in terms of curriculum development skills. On training delivery, when we are developing things that then will need to be put in place in training providers. So there are all these elements that are related on about, related to a problem analysis, and then of course the technical skills in order to digitalize those learning materials and assessment packages. But as you have seen when we show these slides, this is not a linear process. So this process is and will be done of continuous feedback loops around these different, let's say, these different dimensions that we have to analyze in order to create the basis of the process that we are going to do. So this is what I would, what I wanted to share with you around the work that we are in particular doing on this first week, which is the basis of the whole process that we are going to carry out during these upcoming weeks. So I don't know if there are any questions. Feel free to ask any questions or comments or, of course, suggestions to what has been presented until now.
Yeah, may I?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, yes. Thank you.
And please introduce yourself also as well so that we all get to know each other.
Yes, I'm Kham Joms, working for the Standard Department in Curriculum. Before we start the phase 2, yeah, you said that the end of this blended learning, we want to develop the digital training and assessment package. And you said that not start from scratch, but now I would like to confirm you, maybe clearing from you, what the scope of you want to develop. Yes, the learning material is the institutional based learning material assessment package or national based learning assessment package. This must be, and this the question one. And another thing, two things. What is what the scope is the full collection or part of collection or the skill set or the modular learning based. This before we start to phase 2, phase 3. This. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I would like maybe to clarify this point. This is very important, and thanks. And this is actually very good that this comes from the institution that is in charge of curriculum development. about the scope of what we are doing, this is something, of course, I mean, what I presented here is the general objective. Now, how many and what is the scope, what is the extent of the work that we are doing, this is something that we are deciding together. So this is not something that will come from us. This is something where actually the ownership and the decision lies in your hands. Of course, we will need to be, let's say, we will need to have a reasonable target. So we are not going to probably digitalize whole qualifications, because of course this will not take 6 weeks, but rather 6 months. But what we want to digitalize, this decision is yours. The beauty of this process is that we are not going to be prescriptive on what we are going to do together. It is up to you. We are going, it is a little bit like, let's say, when building a house, you know, what we are going to try to give you is some more tools on the ones, more than the ones beyond the ones that you already have. So some more tools on how to take these decisions, how to implement this blending transformation, a blending strategy definition, and then on how to actually digitalize those processes. So it's not as we're going to tell you, we are going to work on qualification A, B, or C, or competency A, B, or C, or let's say assessment package A, B, or C. So this is something that as a group, collectively, we are going to decide. Our role here is to give you some tools and also helping you to ask the correct questions in order to take those decisions. So I just wanted to clarify that from the very beginning. Of course, I mean, there was an identification of broader sectors, because otherwise we should have scanned, I don't know, 300 occupations, which would have been a bit complicated. But among those sectors, please feel free, of course, in collaboration with our colleagues of the ILO in Cambodia, also relating to existing projects and programs, to find out and define altogether what will be the scope of the work that we are going to do. So thank you very much for your questions, and I hope this was clear.
Thank you. My comment. We need, yes, now the important based on the strategy of the by the Ministry of Labor. We want to establish digital learning system for Tibet. So in my comment, I'm not saying we want to retry you like this because we have no time, but we need to promote the goal, the best practice for the learning material, digital learning material and assessment package, because we take the big scope we cannot complete. Maybe one qualification like the CQS level 1 for one occupation for the construction like this, because a lot of people in here, my friend is specialized in like this, we have developed, because we have we have the competencies and training package, we have competency standard, we have curriculum assessment package, we can do them in your guide to develop the learning material by using digital and assessment. This is only my comment.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and exactly, we are going to start from those assessments packages that you already have, from those competency standards that you already have. And actually, this is very important. So to take stock of what exists, but this will be the focus of week number 2. So we are not going to get into further details now. We are going to speak about it next week. But thank you very much. This is an important comment and important questions that you have raised. Are there any other points or comments that may come up? Otherwise, I think that we can move on with the, let's say, the next sequence of our webinar. So I invite Alessia to give us a brief presentation of the results of the survey that actually you have almost all of you have responded. So thanks, first of all, for that. And really, it is important for us to have an idea of how you responded, but also come up with some challenges that we may want then to discuss in the subsequent part of our webinar. Alessia, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Stefano, and thank you all for being here today. I will try to be brief in this presentation of the results of the survey. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to complete it. It is a quite long survey, but it was extremely useful for us to get a general idea and to get a first picture of the situation in Cambodia as far as the digital transformation is concerned. So really quickly, my name is Alessia Evi Colombo, and I am a doctoral researcher at the University of Geneva in Switzerland for the digital technologies in the vocational and educational training realm. Let me just share my screen so that we can get into the real topic of today's meeting. So let me see if that works. Everyone can see it?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. So Stefan already went over the dimension that we use to tackle this process. So I will just skip this part, but just quickly add that all of these dimension, infrastructure, attitude, and skills were analyzed by you in the survey based on 3 levels of stakeholders. So as you have seen in the survey, we had a macro level, which was composed by regulatory agency and policymakers. Then we had a meso level of stakeholders that was made of training center, schools, educational institutions in general. And then finally, we had a micro level stakeholder that was composed of individuals from teachers to trainers to trainees. And the idea is that, of course, each level influenced the next one. And any decision that is made on a policy level will have an impact, of course, on the micro level and vice versa. So this is why it was so important for us to get your perception on the involvement of all these levels and all of these actors. As you have seen, there was an overarching theme in our survey that is represented here by this gray arrow, and that was the social dialogue and digital inclusion part of our survey. And again, really quickly, social dialogue includes all type of exchange of information and negotiation among stakeholders on topics that are of common interest. And we believe that successful social dialogue can resolve important social and economical issues and hopefully boost the economy as well. And as far as digital inclusion is concerned, it is not about hardware or software, but rather it's about how learners employ technologies so that it has an impact not only on their lives, but also on their community in general. So we believe that digital inclusion should be the overall outcome and goal of any digital transformation. So really quickly, these were the main topics in each of our dimensions. What I put here in red are the areas that presented some challenges. And right off the bat, let me tell you that the results of this survey were extremely positive, especially for the attitude area. So again, it is worth noting that there is not one dimension that was crucially problematic. We cannot say that something still needs to be established. Rather, what we want to say is that there are some subtopics that require some reflection on your end, and this is why we are all here in this course to reflect and to talk about. So again, your perception is that attitude is Cambodia's biggest strength. And later in the following slides, we will see all the topics and the sub-items that made attitude such a strong point, according to all of you. Less strong than attitude, but still not weak at all, is the skills dimension, followed by the infrastructure. But again, keep in mind that the overall results were extremely positive. So like I said, we had some challenges in the area of digital inclusion, connectivity, standard setting, and recognition of prior learning. But let's go dimension by dimension, if you will allow me. So if we were looking at an iceberg, as you can see right here, we would look at the emergent part of the iceberg. And below the water, there will be a latent part that is trying to emerge. So as far as the attitudes are concerned, there is a very small part that constitutes an area of challenge, if you want to call it a challenge. And it is what we called the issue part in our survey. So here, as you can see, we have a general idea made of building blocks of what your perception was on the issue topic. So here you can see that it seems like you believe that obstacle and constraints influence the approach to digital transformation rather than available aids. So this is something that we would like to reflect on with you later on. And this is what we could consider a challenge in your perception of your strengths. A crucial point in the dimension of attitude is vision, which is, again, learning and practicing digital skill as a priority. And the adoption of digital technology, you believe that is crucial for the future success of your industry. So as you can see from these little building blocks, there's a lot of agreement, as you can see from this little, well, not so little, but from this block that is blue and light blue. So this is a huge strength of yours. As far as goals, meaning short and long-term goal setting concerning the digitalization process of your industry, you believe that all stakeholders believe in this goal setting. And again, this is why this is a strong asset of your country. Going to the infrastructure iceberg, again, please keep in mind, this is just a rendition of what is emerging, but again, not really latent nonetheless. It seems like connectivity and accessibility, as we will see in the following slide, received some disagreement points, and we will see how that was represented and divided into the levels that we were discussing about. So in this slide, you can see that provision of regular and adequate interconnectivity received pretty high scores in the agreement, but also some disagreement, especially for what is concerned the micro level stakeholders. So it may seem like trainees and trainers are not receiving the highest level of internet connectivity that they could use for their scopes. For accessibility, which is access to a vast realm of digital data, content, and digital information, again, we see that there's some disagreement when it comes to macro level institution and micro level stakeholders. So again, this is something that we should reflect on and try to understand what can be done better to ensure accessibility for all. And again, digital infrastructure prerequisite, which is what Stefano was referring as, you know, the tangible prerequisites. So internet backbone and mobile infrastructure, as well as the implementation of software platform. We can see that this was pretty strong in all areas. So again, we have good precondition to establish positive results as far as the digital implementation of TVET is concerned. And then we are on the skill component of our iceberg. So in this area, digital e-readiness prerequisite and some of the RPL aspects, especially for micro level stakeholders, needs some attention. Again, it's not to say that this is a weak component or a weak dimension for you, but again, this is something that provided some challenges that are worth mentioning. So in this case, digital e-readiness prerequisite concern the information about current and emerging digital technology that are beneficial for the industry from the point of view of all stakeholders. And we see some red and yellow bricks that tells us that it could be better. Although again, the agreement is pretty high, we see some small areas that tells us that again, let's do something about it to make sure that information is available for everybody at all levels. As far as the data usage for the digital process, this is a strength of yours, especially for the micro level stakeholders are concerned. As you can see, there's some huge blue strongly agree blocks here in your perception. So that means that you believe that stakeholders at pretty much all levels can identify and collect right data to help inform decision making in the realm of digital technologies for their sectors. Then we have the analysis and problem solving part, scored pretty homogeneous among all the three levels. And you believe that stakeholders have the skill to interpret the outcome of digital learning training activity to identify assets or issue, and that they are also prepared to respond to this technology related issue to ensure that if a similar issue or problems happens in the future, it can be mitigated by their experience. So this is a really crucial point. And then we go to the training delivery part. This is a pretty strong point. Again, it's interesting to see that you believe that the micro level stakeholders are pretty strong in this sector. So you believe that not only they invest considerable resources to implement use of content authoring tools, but they also can understand and employ such tools, which allows to offer systematic training and learning opportunities to all people involved. And it's good to see that you believe that, again, trainees and trainers have this asset. And then as far as curriculum development, it's interesting to see that this is one of the category that score more homogeneously. So here we have our three macro, meso, and micro levels, and you can tell that nationwide guidelines have been implemented and that nationwide competency standards are going to be used to create profession-specific curricula. And I have seen that among the responders, there's people that are actually working in the department of standard setting, and it doesn't surprise that this is such a strong asset for your country. Then we have the recognition of prior learning, RPL, and this is something that should require a specific portion of our conversation. So we had a lot of items concerning RPL. I try to summarize them for sake of brevity of this presentation in one slide. And one of your strongest assets is that RPL is recognized, excuse me, and stakeholders are aware of its benefits, and then schools and training center are ready or have already put in place recognition of prior learning protocols. But there are some levels that scored pretty low, where you have some strongly disagree component, and especially for the trainees part, which doesn't surprise because RPL is something that really touches our trainees more than anyone. And specifically the area where we would need to really stop and reflect on are the access to regulation and information retrieval, and information on skills assessment and how to get guidance on skills assessment. So we need to keep in mind that a lot of people would come from informal and non-formal venues of learning, and it is crucial for them to understand what your country requires as a formal learning to provide certification, and how to fill the gaps that separate informal learning and informal credential from the actual formal ones that are standardized and requested by your country. So this is something that we should really reflect on. And finally, we get to our two overarching theme of social dialogue and digital inclusion. As I said before, they accompanied us throughout our three dimensions. And again, you perceive that the attitude of Cambodia is really strong as far as social dialogue and digital inclusion. So you believe that stakeholders invest in the importance of keeping informed about emerging technology technology, and they believe in cross-border communication and network building. And as far as digital inclusion, you believe that resources are allocated to all citizens to understand all the issues and challenges that are actually linked to digital inclusion. And you also believe that meso-level actors can fix the issue related to digital inclusion, while micro-level stakeholders are aware of the gaps regarding their inclusion. So again, if we go back to our building blocks graphic rendition, we can see how strong you are in the attitudes and how there's some reflection to be made as far as infrastructure and skills. So for infrastructure, we should really take some time to understand why you think that something more can be done when it comes to macro and meso level stakeholder, to have them collaboratively establish best practices with feasible targets in the digitalization realms. And as far as policymakers, it is important for them to abide by national and international standards on digital inclusion. And it is crucial that tools for feedback are in place to monitor this inclusiveness. So yes, you believe that these are in place, but something more can be done when it comes to infrastructure to allow this sort of implementation. And finally, as far as skills are concerned, you believe that stakeholders utilize learning analytic, data analysis tool and assessment tool to not only monitor, but especially to communicate the outcomes of digital programs. And this is what can help implement changes. So in this area, you scored some low points, meaning that something can be done to improve this part of skills when it comes to social dialogue. And really important as far as digital inclusion, something should be done so that the micro level stakeholders, so we're talking about trainees and trainers, can not only assess the efficacy of inclusive digital curricula, but also be aware of what can be done to implement changes. So they should have the freedom to say, hey, looking at this curriculum, I don't see myself included, and what can I do to make sure that I can be included? Who do I need to talk to? So this is something that is crucial and that needs to be worked on. That's again, and that's your belief. I'm just being a spokesperson for your beliefs and for what the survey has given us as far as answers. So in conclusion, and I'm sorry if that was a really long and wordy conversation, but it is important to keep in mind the positive outcomes of your survey. But again, at the same time, let's not forget that there is still some room for improvement needed. And this is why stakeholders from all levels are challenged to coordinate, motivate, and sustain the energy and the strengths that you have highlighted with the answers to the survey. With these tools in hand, we believe that you could cope with the detriments that COVID-19 has brought forth, and most importantly, that you can support the transformation of the digital TVET system in your country. So thank you all for your attention. I will give the floor back to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessia. I don't know if there are any questions or reactions on what Alessia just presented.
Just let me remind to the participants that the session is recorded, so you will be able to go back to it, and also the slides will be made available with the different graphs and information.
So, in conclusion, Alessia, if you want to give us a 1 minute sum up. So on one side, attitudes, very positive. I mean, this is not our judgment. This is just the data that our participants have let's say, brought forward. So positive attitude toward digital transformation, still some challenges in the skills and attitudes.
Yes.
Sorry, skills and infrastructures.
So, yes, and again, everything scored really positively on the agreement. What we are really giving room for reflections are the area that also received the little red or yellow blocks that you have seen before. So yeah, like Stefano said, the attitude seems to be your strongest assets, and data confirms it because we analyzed all the results, and numbers don't lie. But again, there are some parts that could be even more established. And like Stefano was saying, we're talking about some area on recognition of prior learning, some areas concerning connectivity and accessibility to infrastructures, and some areas concern standard setting. So making sure that, yes, standards are in place, but how can we use them to make sure that everyone gets access to the competency level that they need, and how these competencies can be benchmarked against these standards to provide certification. So I wanted to really keep in mind that the overall result is really positive. But again, let's reflect on what is needing some extra reflection, and what we can do collaboratively to ensure that we can tackle these areas that are still in need of some, maybe of shedding more light onto them, and to make sure that the conversation among stakeholders is in place and active.
You were talking about challenges. Have you identified some challenges for the three dimensions?
Yes, and that's actually something that Manuela will provide our participants in the breakout rooms. We put together 3 slides that are actually encompassing the areas that received higher disagreement points. And this is
Alessia, I'm sharing just quickly so that we do a little overview before the breakout rooms, and we can go through the different dimensions.
For sure. So that was a summary of the areas that received less agreement compared to the others. So for what infrastructures are concerned, we would like you to reflect on connectivity, accessibility, social dialogue, and digital inclusion, and specifically on some areas of these 4 items. So we would like you to think about what can be done to make sure that adequate internet connectivity is provided to all stakeholders, and not just maybe to the stakeholders that are on the macro and meso level. So what we did was really remove from the survey the areas that got some yellow and red blocks, which were the strongly disagree and disagree blocks, and see what can be done, because these are your answers. So what can you do, since you felt like these are areas that are in need of some reflection? What can you do, and what can we do collaboratively to make sure that these problems, which are again not really problematics because your higher scores were still on the agreement level, but what can we do to make sure that we reach some homogeneous consent as far as agreement is concerned, even on these areas?
Would you like to go through the ones on skills also?
Yeah.
And then, okay.
So yes, not to repeat myself from the presentation, but we understood that for RPL, for example, the items, protocols, and regulation are in place and information is easily retrievable, scored pretty low on well, had some disagreement scores. So what can we do to make sure that when a trainee needs to get information on recognition of prior learning, where can he go? Who can he talk to? Is he in a training center? And if so, is this training center providing him with the right information to understand what are the regulations that can help him get recognition for what he did before, maybe informally or non-formally in his previous training or previous learning? And we have noticed that as far as social dialogue, it was some weakness for macro and meso level institutions. So yes, there's an use of learning analytics, but are they using them? Are they using the results to talk to their colleagues, to talk to policymakers, to understand what is going on when a digital program is in place and how to change what is not going accordingly. So these are the areas that, just to give you a few examples, that we want to discuss about when we break out in rooms. So again, these are just summaries, and attitudes. This is an interesting one because as you told us via survey, the attitude is your biggest strength. Although you mentioned, and most of you agreed on the fact that obstacle and constraint influence the approach to the digital transformation rather than the available aids. So it seems like there's some influence of negativity here in this area, and changing attitude is huge. I mean, we understand that, you know, changing infrastructure is probably easier than changing attitude, but keeping in mind that your points for attitude were really high, let's see what can be done to make sure that you are more influenced by available aids rather than by obstacle and constraints.
Thank you very much, Alessia, for the very, let's say, encompassing presentation. So we have really gone through the various points that colleagues have from Cambodia have highlighted. We have to say, in a very positive manner. It's up to you, colleagues, to see if it was maybe optimistic, or if still you may want to deepen a little bit the challenges that Alessia has now presented, and that you can foresee as rooms for improvement for your system. So I will now leave the floor to my colleague Manuela, who is going to introduce herself. You have received already several, let's say, communications from her. And she will present you the next sequence within this webinar, which will be group work. And so we will be divided into breakout rooms.
Yeah, thank
Manuela,
you, Stefano. Yes, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Manuela Di Cara. I work here at the ITCA Law in the area of skills development and TVET. I see many familiar names, and this is because with some of you, we have undergone the e-learning lab on digital TVET back in July, the course 1 and the course 2 in October. So it's nice to see you again here for this this process also, which is I think very interesting. So what we have done so far is that you have answered to this survey individually, which already gives you a little bit of a picture of what are the requirements and the mindset that are necessary to implement this digital transformation process of the TVET sector in Cambodia. Now, Alessia has summarized the results through the 3 dimensions and the different level of stakeholders. So you get a glance of what is the overall picture. But now we want you to work in groups to really co-construct and get clear idea on what are the weak points and the strong points for each of those 3 dimensions: infrastructure, skills, and attitudes, and what is the way forward. So this is the step that we are going to co-construct today. So we identify strong points, challenges, and how do we overcome those challenges? What can be done to make this digital transformation process effective for the future? So the idea is that we divide you in 3 different breakout rooms, and you will work in each breakout room on 1 dimension, so either on infrastructure or skills or attitudes. We will provide you an empty slide with, let's say, a table that has a column on strong points of that dimension, weak points on that dimension, and the way forward. You will need to discuss among groups based on the presentation that you heard and on your thoughts about this topic, and fill in those columns, and then discuss later on in plenary. So I also invite you to pick, let's say, speaker for each of the group that will do a 2-3 minutes presentation of the discussion that came up during the breakout room. You will have half an hour to discuss. There is no right or wrong answer. I mean, it's a discussion of your feeling and your idea of the digital transformation process. And so we're happy to then hear the outcome of that. And it will be good also to have something written through the PowerPoint presentation that we will upload in the eCampus. And so we will have a piece of work that has been jointly constructed on the basis of this survey and of your discussion that will give us in the end a real picture of the digital transformation process status right now and the vision of the future for Cambodia. So
now you will receive an invitation to join the breakout rooms. So you will have 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, we come back. Each of the group will have to present their slide. So please fill in that slide. You will have 4 minutes to present your slide when we come back in the plenary room.
I will enter just quickly into each of the breakout room to send you the slide, but we leave you discuss. I mean, we are not going to be there to let's say to moderate. It's up to you to do the group work, and then we will meet again in the plenary.
So feel free to use the language you want also for the group work. Okay.
Exactly.
We can open the breakout rooms.
Yes.
Great.
Welcome back. Let's wait for some other colleagues to join us. Did we give you enough time? Was it a bit tight? Let me see your faces. Ah, no, you have camera off. Okay, we'll see after. Sophie, is there still people in the breakout room?
They are closed now. The breakout rooms are over.
Okay. So I go ahead. Okay, so welcome back, everyone. So we hope you had an interesting discussion. Let us now hear what was the outcome for each of the dimension, and we will comment each one of them, and then we will do a final wrap up, and that will be the end of our session then in around half an hour. So can I start with the first group on infrastructure? Who was the person reporting for that group? Group 1. Can you please,
From the infrastructure group, is there anyone who would like to tell us about what you've been through? Maybe sharing your screen?
On khang PSE share screen ở đây thì vậy bạn mình tới thấy lecture. Okay, please.
Okay, you gave the floor to the person of group 1. Okay, maybe if group 1 is not ready yet. I see. Okay. So I guess we have identified.
Excuse me, I'm sorry that we are not ready yet. So can we skip a while?
Skip everything? No, but we can ask you to present later. I mean, if that is fine for everyone.
I mean,
okay.
I present later. Yeah,
later. Yeah. Sure. Okay, let's go to group number 2, skills. The reporter of that group may take the floor.
Okay. We are ready for the present. So we are sharing the screen. So after we discussing half an hour, so we pick up the point for the strong point. During the digital or the COVID pandemic, the digital skill, e-learning or everything digital. So we are raise awareness campaign. This is very important. So the school start for training by online or blending for the student, for to the stakeholder, and we try to raise awareness compared to the private sector and develop partner to support for the skill. And also for Cambodia, especially for the Ministry of Labor and Vocational Training, we start implement the e-learning platform that we develop for support the TVET school under the supervision of the Ministry of Labor and Vocational Training. So we develop and we implement with testing, with pilot for sustainable of the training program in TVET. And to do that, for the leadership, start from the minister and the Secretary of State to from the national level and to the sub-national level. So the leadership commitment and everyone committed to support to do the online or digital in the ministry. And for the strong point, we still have the challenge and or weak point. So we do not have any specific guideline of the digital for the support the TVET school. Even the curriculum, developed curriculum, the guideline, online training, blended learning, we don't have. And the budgeting, so it's new. So the mobilize, the budgeting and support from the DP or private sector or the government is still less. And for the technical capacity, I can say the trainer, the teacher, and the leadership, institutional management is the capacity of the online or blended learning is still low. So we need to improve them because it's new. Normally they train by traditional teaching, face-to-face class in the class, so by online. So they need to produce the video, to develop the standard curriculum, everything for the training program. And private sector, they do not involve with us so much, even the technical, even the sharing knowledge, experience, or support the technology or budget for the TVET school is still limited. And we also discussed that the technology is spread evolution, so it changed. So everyone moving fast, run up to adopt the technology, spread evolution. And I have mentioned about the pedagogy. So this is very important. Pedagogy, even the hard skill and the pedagogy skill. So the teacher need to still limited. And our priority going forward, we familiarize train stakeholder with the digital tool. So it's very important for the private sector. And we are thinking about the capacity building of trainers. So here today we improve our capacity building for the relevant party like the ministry, the school for adapt for sustainable training. And also we develop the standard training package. So it's really important for support the learning and training for the TVET school. And mobilize resource to support. This is very important. Without the resource, without technical support, we can do not everything. And physical infrastructure also is important. So we need the human resource, we need the standard training package, infrastructure, and mobilize resource. So our priority going forward to support the skill in Cambodia. So that's all my presentation and my group 2. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Simon. Maybe I give the floor to Karin. Yeah.
Yeah, it is very interesting. Thank you very much, and very clear the way you are describing all this. And it really also reflects what we've seen in the survey, because you are very clearly saying here that you are aware of the importance of going online, blending the curricula, using have tech-enabled solutions for skills development, and you did quite a lot with those awareness campaigns, making sure that you are involving every stakeholders at different levels, telling them about the importance of blending the solutions and using technology to make sure skills development is efficient. So what you've suggested as well, or what you are mentioning in terms of leadership and how far information and awareness needs to be coming from government and policymakers to make sure that down the line things are understood and change is undertaken and efficiently undertaken. So we have this, awareness of the importance, and you are also reflecting here that there is still a need for capacity development, whether that be on the pedagogical approach and methodology in teaching, but also on how to use the tools, on maybe visibility on the tools that are available and that can be used, and you are really willing to make sure that any stakeholder is being familiarized and aware of the possibilities and know how to use them in the short or medium run. So that's capacity building and capacity development issue is very important, and the things that you are suggesting in terms of priorities are the ones that I think should be undertaken in terms of increasing the trainer's capacity, whether that be on the pedagogy side or on the use of the tool, like more technical aspect of it. The fact that you are willing to develop standard learning packages just makes sense, to make sure that TVET centers and institutions and schools have the capacity to rely on standards, on templates, on already existing frameworks they can build their courses and curricula on. So that is very important as well. And of course, the mobilization of resources, whether they are human or financial, is a key aspect as well, because it is great to be developing skills and how to use some specific tools, but equipment of schools and of trainees is important as well, and definitely financial resources need to be mobilized in that sense. So yeah, very interesting, and I like the way it really reflects the survey results and how you did already a lot, and you are very much aware of what needs to be done, and today you are building your priorities on capacity building and development. But again, the fact that you're aware of the importance and that you are willing to go for it is a huge part of the work already done, because as we said, attitudes and mindsets are key to make sure changes are being undertaken and efficiently undertaken. So thanks very much for sharing this. I think it's very positive to see how you are willing to be moving forward on that skills area. Thank you very much, Simon, for sharing, and thanks to the group for coming with this.
Thank you, Karine, for your comments. Is there, before we move on to the next group, is there any comments or question from other participants from other group? Whether you agree, disagree, or would like to add anything on what has been presented in the skills dimension? No, okay. I see there is no comments. If you have afterwards, then we still have a bit of time for that. Let me then go into the second group on attitudes. May I ask the reporter to unmute and to share their screen for the presentation? Okay, I see someone is sharing a screen.
Great.
You might need to unmute because we cannot hear you.
We can hear you, yeah.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. I'm from Group 3. I'm doing about the attitude. So as you mentioned above, attitude, you focus on behavioral and action to achieve it. And the key term that we are studying in attitude, there are 3. First, related to work culture. Second is related to the infrastructure available. And the third about the technical resources. So according to our discussion, it is the learning from our school in TVET. Mostly I only heard some name of some school, but I'm not sure that all my team is from the school or not like that. But the weak point that we found is related to the internet connection. Even that the teacher and student has provided the package of the internet for using it, but according to the area of the student places, so the internet connection sometimes work not well for learning virtually or accessing to the resources. And the second point is related to the digital literacy support for the teacher and student. Sometimes it's still limited. And the other thing, even that the teacher and student have the infrastructure such as computer, tablet, or smartphone, but the specification of both things are limited. So it also the problem for we have it, but it still have the limitation of using it. And for the strong point, even that we meet the problem in this pandemic, but all the teacher and all the students still have the personal development and try to face with the problem by still keep learning and keep teaching. And both the teacher and student also can learn about new technology, new tool, even that it is not yet the standard one, but the teacher and student can use such as Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Classroom, Google Form, or Kahoot to help their learning and teaching. And moreover, the teacher also can delegate more theory on technical to the student, even that the student and the teacher cannot meet each other. And the strong point, we have the infrastructure, like I said at the moment, we have computer and tablet or smartphone and internet package. Even it is limited, but we have it. Better than we don't have anything when we face that problem. The other thing, on the school always have the IT support. So all the IT can help the teacher and help the student on some related to the technical tool or something that they can have in IT field like that. So it is also the strong point that we have, and only we will move forward next time. And the teacher also actively doing some activity related to screen record the lesson to share with the student, even that the internet it is not work so well, but they try to record the video and share through Telegram or something to help the student to learn. And the priorities going forward that we are focused is the first, we might have the learning management system to manage all the content or all the activity that we are going to use with the student. And we also can collect some data accurately from the student. And then we also meet with the IT team to improve on the technical support or related to the pedagogy that we are going to use for the future on the LMS like that. So that's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing this. What I get from this is that, again, there's a lot of willingness from the part of both trainees and trainers on this will to learn, use new tools, use new resources. You've mentioned some of them, like screen recording or Kahoot for the teachers to provide training and assessment. So again, within those strong points, I think the willingness to learn, how to make our way in this new environment is critical, and I think you've quite highlighted it here. You also mentioned, from what I understand, that within this specific environment, there's also and Alessia had pointed out this from the survey as well, and Stefan also mentioned it. It's not only a matter of equipping and bringing devices to the classroom or to the students or learners, but it's also sometimes difficult to engage them. And the adoption part, I think you've mentioned here, is really important. So it is all about attitude and mindset, and making sure that it's not because you're equipped and that your connectivity is good and that you have a device to learn online or teach online as well, that you are going to be into it. And so it's very important to work on that as well, in terms of how to engage learners and teachers and pedagogical teams to adopt and make sure that solutions and tools and devices are being used and used appropriately. So I think this is something that comes out of what you've just shared, and that is important as well. You've also mentioned IT and IT support and IT teams being included in that ecosystem, and I think it's critical. And from the earliest stage of this transition and transformation, IT teams should definitely be involved, because they will make it happen, like technologically speaking, and because they are going to be here in maintenance and support to both teachers and trainers. In that respect, they definitely need to make sure that they are, aware of your needs as pedagogical teams, and of the trainees' needs as well. So what comes out of what you've shared is a willingness to learn, and a willingness to create this learning experience, learning and teaching experience. You talked about, the LMS, you talked about the support that teachers and trainees need. And so it is very important that, yes, this is all tech enabled, like technology is here to support all of this, but to make sure that the experience is successful, we need human resources and human presence. And so teachers are here to support this, and of course IT for the technical aspects. So yeah, thank you very much, because this is an opportunity for us to tackle some of the key aspects of this digital transition. So thanks again for sharing this. Maybe we can move to the infrastructure team, if you're ready.
Just before.
Sorry,
that,
yeah,
no worries. There is just a comment in the chat box from Sophie Chai. So he is asking to the group 3, so on the attitude, should there be an intersector or ministry IT and technology committee that can, let's say, keep up to date with the future emerging technologies, and can then share information equally to all schools? So I guess this is a question for group 3. Did this come up with throughout the discussion, or maybe, I don't know if Karine also wants to comment on that one.
Yeah, just a quick brief comment, because I'm conscious of time, but here sometimes Ministry of Education are not fully yet equipped with professionals and experts in that respect. And what I saw up to now is close collaboration and cross ministries efforts, and namely with the ministries of digital transformation or ministries of ITC that are allies in that respect. I mean, in terms of the digital transition of education. So yes, I think it's critical to make those cross ministries collaborations happen. Also because for the time being, in Ministry of Education, it's sometimes still difficult to identify experts or technical experts in that respect. But maybe other participants want to come in and add to it.
Thank you, Karine. I don't know if there is a quick comment from group 3 before we move on, also because indeed we're a bit late with time. You can also, if you wish, respond in the chat box, and then we can also have a conversation there if you wish. I see someone unmuted.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Just want to join in on that question. Just to my knowledge, but I'm not so sure about it as well. To my understanding, within the Cambodian, there should be a kind of like national committee on the kind of IT infrastructure across the ministries. This is just my understanding. I'm just not so sure whether it's at the national level or whether it's just the Ministry of Education. So maybe we can find out more if we have time. So I believe that there should be some already available for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment and let's say a mix between comment and question. We can also provide let's say a forum discussion in the platform, a general one where you can have let's say a discussion around what came up in those live session if you wish. So I can set up that.
That would be great, I think, Manu. Yeah, I was thinking about that as well. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so let's move on to the last group on infrastructure. You can take the floor and present to us what was the discussion in the group. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry that we are not really 100% completed the group discussion because we have a problem at the beginning, like the file is error, so we take time, so we run out of time. So okay, so actually the infrastructure we have some strong point and weak point, and also the priority going forward. Actually, I want to talk about our strong point first. We got only the few points here. So we actually have the ministry have established the learning platform for all the sector. So this is a really good one. This is a really good process to all the sector to improve their learning digital learning tool. Yeah, and we are actually have also the problem with the connectivity because some of the because of the weather. Sometimes the weather is not stable. Sometimes the weather is rainy. Sometimes is has problems. So it causes the internet connectivity unstable for the user and also for the provider. So this is also the problem. And sometimes we talk about the user budgeting. Sometimes, example like we provide the training, online training to our student or something like that. Then the students, some people they don't have enough budget to top up their phone or computer. So all these devices need to top up. So sometimes they mention that this is a problem with the budget for them. And one more is about we be back to the strong point. One more point is actually we always provide the online training to the stakeholder, which is actually like we have a lot of different sector in Cambodia, like tourism or other private sector. So we offer the online training to all of them, but some of them are still not familiar with the tool, how to use it, or how to deliver the digital learning tool to the students. So this is also the problem, because we are not familiar enough with that. So we need to improve more about the digital learning tool. But I think the priority for the future, we will understand more the usage of the digital learning tool, yeah, for in the future. So yeah, that's it for my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David. Karin,
thank you very much for sharing this as well. So yeah, main challenge is the internet connectivity, as you said, going down with weather conditions sometimes, and you were talking about individuals as well. So I think it's an important aspect to look at, because we often talk about TVET centers and TVET schools, connectivity issues and equipment challenges, but because we are talking about going online, we also talk about students having the opportunity, and we would like them to continue learning outside of the classroom, and so maybe learning at home, or learning in a library where they could go on and continue their learning experience. And so I think it is key in that respect that policies or TVET institutions enable not only TVET centers, equipment and connectivity, but that we can also take a look at the students themselves and how they can continue this learning experience outside of the center of the schools, and how we can help making sure that they are equipped to do so, whether that be with devices. You talked about mobile phones or tablets or computers, laptops, but also making sure that within their homes or within some specific places where they can continue to learn outside of the school, they're also enabled in terms of equipment and connectivity to do so. So I think this is something that comes out of what you've shared as well, yes, TVET centers need to be equipped and connected in a relevant way, but what about individuals and students out of those schools and after the class? Are they sufficiently equipped and connected? Another aspect that comes out of what you've just said as well is the fact that the use of those tools is still something that needs to be tackled. And when you are referring to connectivity which is unstable, there's definitely a challenge here or a need to identify what type of solutions, platforms and tools and content is the most relevant for the specific bandwidth or the specific connectivity issues that you have. So for example, we are talking about mobile applications or mobile platforms that enable offline use of the resources, that enable the that makes it possible, the possibility to download resources for the students, to make sure that connectivity is not an issue anymore. We are talking about videos, but are they the right and relevant channel or resources to make sure that the students within this specific context can access them and use them? So there's also something, from what you just said, there's also something on adapting the technology that is being used to the specific context of low connectivity or unstable connectivity. And I think this is something that definitely will be tackled during the coming weeks, in terms of, yes, there are a lot of wonderful tools that can be used and wonderful resources that can be offered to our students and teachers, but are they adapted to the connectivity issues that the country is facing, and how can we make sure that what we are choosing in terms of solutions, of tools, of platforms, of format is really adapted to this? So thanks very much for sharing this, because again, I think we are learning from that to see on what we should be focusing in the weeks to come. Thank you very much for sharing. Thank you, Manu. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Karine. So I think those was 3 very comprehensive and interesting presentation touching upon different dimensions. Yeah, I will collect them, so you're sending them to me, so that's great. Maybe we can do a final, let's say 1-minute wrap up from Karine, just overall idea from the 3 discussion, a quick one before then I give and afterwards I give the floor to Stefano for closing the session. Thank you.
Yes, well, yeah, really briefly, because I think that what was just shared really confirms that both, that infrastructure, skills, and mindset or attitudes are very key to make sure this digital transformation happens in the right way. The fact that you are mentioning that connectivity is still an issue, that tools are not enough, or connectivity is not enough to make it happen, and that skills need to be developed is very important as well. And again, yes, the overall experience of the beneficiaries, like the students, eventually is critical to make sure that the successful experience is really critical to make sure that learning happens eventually, and that learning outcomes are the most successful in the end. So skills, infrastructure, and attitude are definitely the main words of this, and I think that all of your input just confirmed that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karine. I think indeed the fruit of these group works, let's say, merged with the results of the survey that Alessia presented, gave us the possibility to construct this let's say, stock taking of what is happening in Cambodia relating to the digitalization of the skill system. And I think it's really very, very interesting to start from there, to understand what is the context in which we are going to operate with this process. I thank very much all the colleagues who have participated in this call. We were more or less 30 people all along for these 2 hours. Now, what's next? Please go to the e-learning platform to see the different materials that are there. There will also be the recording of this session. So if you are following the recording of this session, I hope you enjoyed the discussion. And really, we are looking forward next week. We are going to discuss about the occupations that we want to tackle, the competencies that we want to work on. So you will have some activities to be done all together in order to, let's say, get to this final decision on what will be the objects that we would like to work on, what would be the competencies, and on which occupations we want to work on. So from my side, thank you very much for your participation. It was a pleasure to have here representatives both from the ministries. We saw the Deputy DG taking the floor, to all, to the employers organizations, the TVET centers, workers organizations. So it's really a pleasure to have this diverse group also from the macro, meso, and micro levels that we have analyzed. So it was really a pleasure and really very good insights on what is happening currently in the country, and to try to draft a common vision of this current situation that we will try to improve through our process. This is our goal, and we're going to get there all together. Once again, thank you very much for being all together today, and see you next week in our meeting. You will get all the information always from the ITC ILO through emails and through notifications sent through the e-learning platform. So feel free always to join, respond, ask questions, comments, and suggestions for the success of this initiative. Thank you very much, and we will catch up. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stefano. Bye bye.
Thank you, Gigi. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.